I was 24, finishing up a diesel mechanics course at night school, living in my in-laws' basement, working 2 jobs, and gearing up for my final certification exam. It was the one that could change everything, get me out of dead-end jobs and into a union gig at the bus depot. I had 2 days left before the exam. Then Ernie snapped. I was sitting at the table, surrounded by my books, notes, and diagrams, when he stormed in, drunk as hell. Without saying a word, he shoved everything off the table, my binder hitting me right in the face hard enough to split my eyebrow open. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at him, blinking the blood out of my eyes. Karen was standing by the stairs, watching, laughing. That sound, the way her laugh hit me, it was like a punch to the gut. She didn't say a word, just stood there, arms crossed, enjoying the show. Ernie glared down at me, his breath reeking of beer. "This whole future crap is a fantasy," he snarled, kicking my work boots aside. "You ain't no mechanic. You're just a parasite living off my hot water." I just stayed on the floor, blood dripping onto my boots, trying to make sense of what had just happened. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me stuck under their roof, stuck under their thumb. Easier to control that way, easier to make me feel small. I wiped the blood from my eyebrow with my sleeve and stared at the wreckage of my notes. Everything I'd been working for was on the floor, and they were happy to watch it all burn. I thought for a second about getting up, fighting back. But what was the point? I wasn't going to win. Not here, not in this house. I knew it then. They'd never see me as anything more than their burden. Growing up in Joliet, Illinois, wasn't exactly a charm. Dad died when I was 10, and after that, it was just me and my mom. She cleaned houses and smoked through every conversation, like she couldn't put the cigarette down long enough to give a damn about anything else. School wasn't my thing, but engines? That was something I understood. I remember taking apart a lawnmower when I was 12 just to see how it worked. Never got a pat on the back for it. Never even a good job. Just silence. Vince, my older brother, was the one who got attention. He dropped out at 16, started working at the paper plant, and at 18, he bought a truck. Ma treated him like he'd discovered fire or something. Hell, she acted like he won a Nobel Prize. Me, I got called lazy and book smart but useless because I wanted something more. When I told them I was going to trade school, they just laughed. "Pretending to be something you're not," Ma said, as if wanting better was some kind of crime. Like a guy who could fix things with his hands was nothing compared to a guy who could just punch a clock and keep his head down. I thought maybe, just maybe, when I met Karen at 21, things would be different. She'd be the one to see past all the shit, right? Wrong. She was her father's daughter through and through. He wasn't just a man with his own problems. He was the problem. And when Karen and I moved into her parents' house to save for our future, I thought we were working towards something. Instead, I found out I wasn't a partner in this life I was building. I was just another guest with chores. That was the turning point. That's when I realized the house wasn't mine. It wasn't even ours. It was theirs. And I wasn't part of it. Not really. Ernie would come home drunk, like he always did, and bitch about me not pulling my weight. Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs, killing myself just to keep up with their expectations. Karen would stand there, arms folded, and not say a word. She was too busy playing the role of the dutiful daughter. And me? I was just the guy who couldn't win. Whatever I did, it was never enough. "You're always too busy with your books," Ernie would say, "but you don't know shit about fixing anything around here." I'd fix a car in the driveway for extra cash, and he'd walk by, roll his eyes, and grunt. "Still pretending, huh?" It didn't matter that I was going to school at night, that I was giving everything I had to make something of myself. To them, I was just a kid who didn't know his place. And Karen, she was more interested in making sure I didn't rock the boat than standing up for me. The day we moved in was the day I stopped being a man in my own right. I didn't have a say in anything anymore, not where we lived, not what I did with my time. I was just a fixture, something that could be ignored until it was time to help with the laundry or take out the trash. So, yeah, when Ernie smashed my binder 2 days before the exam, I wasn't surprised. It wasn't the first time I'd been knocked down by him, by Karen, by everyone who thought I was nothing more than a pipe dream they could tear apart at will. I just didn't realize how much of me I'd given away until it was too late, until I couldn't get it back. For 3 years, I worked warehouse gigs during the day and fixed cars in neighbors' driveways at night, scraping together enough to pay for trade school. I was running on fumes, always tired, but I kept pushing, kept trying to build something that could get me out of this mess. Karen never asked how my classes were going, not once. It wasn't like I expected her to throw a party for me. But, how's it going? Would have been nice. Her mom, Janice, would only remind me to take the trash out before I studied. That was the extent of her support. And Ernie? He had a front row seat to the whole thing and spent every day finding new ways to make me feel like garbage. Reading manuals don't make you a mechanic, he'd sneer when I was at the table, poring over schematics. It's all just book learning. You can't fix shit with just books. I kept my mouth shut, but inside, I was dying a little more every day. It wasn't just the insults, it was the way they all acted like I didn't matter. I wasn't part of the family, I was the outsider who didn't know his place. When I passed my midway exam with top marks, I was hoping for something. Maybe a moment where Karen would look at me differently, where she'd be proud of me. Instead, she looked up from the laundry basket, barely glancing at the paper in my hand, and said, "Congrats, I guess." Then handed me a list of things around the house that needed fixing, as if passing a major exam was just another task on a to-do list. I stood there for a minute, holding the paper, trying not to let the anger bubble up. But that was the problem. Standing up for myself meant nothing. It only made things worse. Every time I'd push back, Ernie would make sure the whole family knew about it. "Oh, so you're too good for this place now, huh?" he'd say. "Got your head so far up, that school's ass you don't even see what's happening right here." They'd all turn on me. Karen, her mom, Vince, when he stopped by. They'd all gang up on me, making me feel like the enemy in my own home. It didn't matter how much I worked or how hard I studied. In their eyes, I was still that lazy kid who thought he could be something better. By the time my final certification exam came around, I was a shell. Exhausted, stressed, and completely alone in that house. I barely slept, barely ate. My body felt like it was shutting down, but I kept telling myself that once I passed, things would change. Maybe Karen would see me as more than just the guy who did the chores. Maybe Ernie would finally respect me. Maybe they'd all stop treating me like I was just some guest who had overstayed his welcome. But deep down, I knew I was fooling myself. This was the life they wanted for me. One where I was always scrambling, always struggling, always trying to get their approval. And no matter how hard I tried, it would never be enough. I'd never be enough. But still, I held on to that stupid hope. I kept telling myself it would all be different after the exam. And I kept pushing forward. 2 nights before my final, I was hunched over the dining room table, drowning in textbooks, practice sheets, and schematics. I had every damn thing spread out in front of me. Notes I'd spent years collecting. Diagrams I'd studied until I could recite them in my sleep. I had to pass this exam. There was no other option. Ernie came in like a freight train, stumbling and swearing under his breath. The stench of beer hit me before he even said a word. He kicked the chair out from under me, sending me sprawling across the floor. My binder flew across the room, the papers scattering like confetti in a storm. "You think you're better than us, huh?" he yelled, his face red and twisted. "Just 'cause you can read torque specs, you think that makes you better than me, better than this family?" Before I could get up, he grabbed the spine of my workbook and slammed my head into the wall. The impact rattled my skull, and my vision blurred for a second. The left side of my face went numb. I don't even know if I made a sound. I couldn't hear anything over the pounding in my ears. Karen was standing at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, watching. She was barely even looking at me, just watching him, then turning her eyes back to her phone. "He's stressed," she said flatly. "Just let him vent." Let him vent. Let him vent? I could feel the blood starting to trickle down the side of my face, pooling at my temple. But it didn't matter. Not to her. Not to him. I didn't know what hurt worse, the impact or the sound of her voice. That cold, detached tone, as if what was happening wasn't anything more than a casual argument over dinner. Like she couldn't even be bothered to see what was happening in front of her. Ernie's spit hit me as he yelled some more, but I couldn't make sense of his words. The world felt distant. All I knew was the burn in my temple, the rising panic in my chest, and the realization that I had nothing, not here, not with them. I pushed myself to my feet, my hands shaking. My head felt heavy, and my vision was swimming. I grabbed my keys from the table, feeling the heat from the blood still dripping from my face. My temple throbbed as I fumbled to get my jacket on. Karen didn't say anything as I walked past her, not a single word of concern, just silence. I didn't even look back as I walked out the door. I didn't care if she called after me. I didn't care if Ernie followed me out, swinging a beer bottle or worse. I didn't go back. I spent the night in my truck, parked in a dark lot near a gas station. The cold air cut through my jacket, but it didn't matter. I pulled a greasy towel from my tool bag and pressed it to my head, trying to stop the bleeding. I couldn't afford to go to the hospital. No insurance, no money. It was just me and that towel and the weight of the night pressing down on me. I thought about what I was leaving behind, what I was walking away from, but I didn't feel anything except numb. Maybe I should have been scared. Maybe I should have been worried about what would happen next. But the only thing I could focus on was how stupid I'd been to ever think that passing this exam would change anything. I wasn't coming back. I knew that for sure. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for their approval anymore. I barely slept 2 hours in the truck, but I wasn't going to waste any more time. I drove to campus early, the weight of the blood still damp on my shirt. The pounding in my head felt like a jackhammer was going off inside my skull. I didn't even feel tired. I felt angry, and that anger was what kept me going. I went straight to the janitor, told him my situation, and asked if he'd unlock the classroom. He didn't ask questions, just handed me the keys. I went in, spread my soaked notes out on the table, and used the hand dryer to dry them off. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. I didn't have a choice. I had to take that exam. I had to pass. The whole time I was sitting there, I could barely concentrate. My head throbbed, my vision was fuzzy, but I didn't stop. I kept pushing through. I wrote every answer, barely keeping my hand steady, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let Ernie's voice in my head tell me I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't make it. The exam was a blur, but I finished. Somehow, I finished. A week later, the results came in. I passed, barely. My hands shook when I saw the certification number on the paper. I stared at it for a while, not really feeling any relief, just the weight of it sinking in. It wasn't the victory I imagined. There was no one to share it with, no one to say, "I told you so" to. But it was mine, my ticket out. I found a room above an auto parts store and paid the first month's rent with a loan from my old manager at the garage. I didn't have much. I didn't even have a real bed, just a mattress on the floor and my tools piled in the corner. But it was mine. No one could take it from me. Karen never called, not once. Her last words to me were, "You're acting like a child." Funny how they always had something to say when they were the ones making my life hell. She didn't get it. She never did. I didn't care. Not anymore. I used that anger, the anger from her, from Ernie, from everything, to land a temp gig at a diesel repair shop. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. And I was good at it. Within months, I was pulling full-time shifts, working my ass off, learning every inch of the job. There was no more room for doubt, no more room for their voices in my head. Every shift was another step forward. Every turn of the wrench felt like I was getting closer to who I was supposed to be. 2 years later, I had union benefits, my own tools, and a little apartment I could finally call mine. I even had a second bedroom I turned into a workshop, stacked with all the parts and projects I'd been accumulating. It felt like something I'd built from nothing. I wasn't living large, but I wasn't scraping by either. I had something solid under my feet for the first time in my life. Ernie's words still haunted me sometimes. "You ain't no mechanic." That echo in my head, the weight of it, it stayed with me. But it didn't cripple me anymore. It pushed me. Every insult, every "you'll never make it," it became fuel. The harder I worked, the more I knew I was proving him wrong. And it felt damn good. Eventually, I became lead tech at a city bus yard, the same place I'd once dreamed of working at. I was running a crew, making decisions, calling the shots. I had my own tools, my own team. I had the kind of respect I'd never gotten at home. I was making $41 an hour, plus a pension, and the best part, no one could tell me I didn't belong there anymore. At 32, I bought my first new car. Nothing fancy, just a reliable ride, but it was mine. And it felt like the weight of the past was finally starting to shift. I started mentoring the younger guys at the shop, guys from rough homes similar to mine, who'd been handed shit by the world and expected to settle for it. I told them straight, "You don't need their permission to change your life." I meant it too. They didn't need anyone else's approval to take control. They just needed the guts to make it happen. Then one afternoon, I ran into Karen. I was at the grocery store, grabbing some lunch meat for the week, when I saw her in one of the aisles. She looked older, tired, like she hadn't had a good night's sleep in years. She saw me before I saw her, and I watched her face for a second. I could tell she didn't know what to say. She hadn't seen me in over 2 years, not since I walked out. She stepped toward me, awkward as hell, and asked, you still play with engines?" I couldn't help the corner of my mouth twitching. "Yeah," I said. "I still play with engines. Actually, I make $41 an hour now, plus pension." She froze for a second, her eyes wide. I could see the shock in her face. I wasn't some kid working a warehouse job anymore. I wasn't some deadbeat husband she could dismiss. She took a breath, then said, "Ernie, he passed." I nodded. "I know," I said, and for a second I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just nothing. Then I turned and walked away. No sorry from her. No, "How have you been?" Just a moment of her trying to reach out, maybe thinking I'd still care. But I was done. I didn't need their approval anymore. I never had. And I wasn't going to waste another minute letting them take up space in my head. A few years ago, a local trade school asked me to speak. They had heard about the mentoring I'd been doing at the shop, and they wanted me to share my story with a new class of students. At first I thought they were crazy. What the hell could I tell a group of kids that they didn't already know? But I agreed anyway. When I walked in, the place was packed. Young faces, a mix of nervous excitement and skepticism. I could see the hunger in some of their eyes, the same hunger I had once had, back when I was sitting in classrooms, dreaming of getting out. I told my story. No names, no unnecessary details, just the facts. The same story I'd lived, how it wasn't easy, how people didn't believe in me, how it all came down to me, and the work I was willing to put in. At the end of the talk, one of the guys raised his hand. He was younger, maybe 18 or 19, wearing the look of someone who was still trying to figure out if this whole trade school thing was worth it. "What would you say to someone whose family says he's wasting his time here?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. I looked at him, took a breath, and said, "You're not here to prove them wrong. You're here to prove yourself right. That's enough." The room was quiet for a second. Then the clapping started, slowly at first, but it built, and before I knew it, I was getting a standing ovation. The applause didn't feel like anything I'd experienced before. It wasn't a paycheck. It wasn't recognition from some higher up. It was real. These kids understood, even if they didn't know the whole story. It meant more than any pay stub ever did. It meant that what I'd fought for wasn't just mine anymore. It had become something that could help them too. That night, I went home and framed my certification. I'd kept it tucked away in a drawer for years, but something about that day made me realize it deserved more than that. I hung it above my workbench, right where I could see it every day. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the proof that I had earned every inch of the ground I stood on. It wasn't about Ernie. It wasn't about Karen. It wasn't about anyone else who had told me I couldn't make it. It was about me, and I had earned it. Last month I retired. First time in 35 years I woke up without a shift to clock into. No tools to grab, no engines to fix. It felt strange at first, like I'd forgotten how to sit still. But as the days passed, I started to appreciate the quiet, the fact that I didn't have to be somewhere every day. For the first time in a long time, I had a choice about what to do with my time. One afternoon, my nephew, Vince's kid, stopped by. He's 19, still figuring things out, and he said he wanted to go to school for HVAC. He looked nervous, like he was waiting for me to shoot him down, like the rest of the family would have. "You think it's worth it?" he asked, his voice low. I looked at him for a long time, not sure what to say at first. Then I told him, "You get that paper. No one can take it from you. Not ever." He nodded slowly, like the weight of that hit him. Then he said something that hit me harder than I expected. "Dad says you're the only one in the family who made something of himself." It stung in a way I wasn't ready for. I didn't need a damn apology from Vince or anyone else, but hearing that from his kid, that hurt. It was the kind of recognition I'd never gotten from my own father, or Karen, or Ernie. It wasn't something I had ever expected. But it mattered. I took a step toward the shelf where my old tools were lined up, grabbed the torque wrench I'd used when I first started out, and handed it to him. "Start with this," I told him, "but finish with a damn diploma." He looked at it, then at me, and I saw the understanding in his eyes. Maybe he didn't need all the details of my story, but he knew what it meant. He knew that this tool had helped build my life. I didn't need Karen or Ernie to understand what they'd done to me. I didn't need them to apologize or change. What they gave me was just fuel for what I built. Something solid, something real. The life I have now, the one I fought for, started the night I walked out with blood on my collar and never looked back.